This is lesson 1-2, adding and subtracting decimals. Please get out your notebooks and something to write with. Title your paper lesson 1-2, adding and subtracting decimals. And when you're ready, you can, we'll move on to the next page. These are key concepts that you do not have to copy in your notes. We're going to make a foldable for them in class. So, just so you're familiar with the properties of addition, the first one is the identity property of addition. And what that means is the sum of 0 and a, which can be any number, is always going to be equal to a. So if we look here at the example, the arithmetic example, 5.6 plus 0 is 5.6. So what that just means is when you add 0 to any number, you're always going to get that number for an answer. Now here's an algebra example, and an algebra example uses variables or letters, which might be something new to you this year. So here's the algebraic example. A plus 0 is equal to a. The next property, property number 2, is the commutative property of addition. And what that says is you can change the order of the numbers that you're adding and it doesn't change the sum. So if we look at this, we have 1.2 plus 3.4. So if we add those together, 1.2 plus 3.4, we get 4.6. But now if we add them the other way, 3.4 plus 1.2, we still get 4.6. So it doesn't matter which way you add the numbers, you're still going to get the same answer. So the algebraic way of saying that is a plus b is the same as b plus a. So you can flip the order that you add numbers. And the third property is the associative property of addition, and that changes what the numbers are grouped with, but it still does not change the answer. So here we have 2.5 plus 6, which would be 8.5 plus 4, and 8.5 plus 4 is 12.5. Now over here on this side we have 6 and 4 grouped together, which is a little easier to add because I know 6 plus 4 is 10. So 2.5 plus 10, which is equal to 12.5. So these two are equal to each other. The algebra way of saying that is the quantity, which is what this is in parentheses, the quantity a plus b plus c is equal to a plus the quantity b plus c. So it just says that you can group the numbers differently and you're still going to get the same answer. So why do we need to know these properties of addition? You're going to want to copy these examples down in your notebook and follow along as I do the first problem. So the properties are going to help you do mental math. So for example, in this first problem, we want to maybe move these two numbers or switch these two numbers here because we know that, or I know that 0.7, 7/10 plus 1 and 3/10 is going to equal 2. So I'm going to change the order of the problem. 7/10 plus, and I'm going to switch the 1.3 and the 12.5. And then I'm going to take and group these two numbers together. So when I add those, I get 2. And then 2 plus 12.5 is equal to 14.5. So it just makes it easier that I can do this in my head instead of lining up all the decimals and then having to add the numbers together. It just helps simplify the problem. So why don't you pause the video and try this one on your own using mental math. Okay, let's see how you did. Now if I were to do this problem, I would switch 5.3 and 0.6. So the problem would read 4.4 plus 0.6 plus 5.3. And I should explain why I decided to switch that, because I know that 4/10 and 6/10 equals 1 whole. So when I add those together, I have 4, and then the 4/10 and 6/10 is equal to 1. So I actually get 5 plus 5.3, which is equal to 10 and 3/10. Example number 2. I want you to write this down in your notes, the steps for adding decimals. When you're adding decimals, you need to, number 1, align the decimals. Number 2, you need to add zeros so the addends have the same number of decimal places. Once you're done copying that in your notes, we'll start on the first example. So if you need to pause the video, you can. So we're going to add these decimals. Make sure you copy these examples in your notes. So I have 3.53 and 2.6. And I want you to notice how when I did this, the decimals are aligned. That means that the decimals are in the same spot or in the same position. Now I can add. The second step says to add some zeros. So I'm going to add a 0 here, so then I have the tenths place and the hundredths place. So we add. 3 plus 0 is 3. 5 plus 6 is 11. I'm going to carry the 1. And then 3 plus 2 is 5 plus 1 is 6. Now that decimal point is going to come right down here, and it's going to be in the same position as the other decimal points were, so they all align. So the answer is 6.13. Why don't you pause the video and try the next problem on your own? Okay, let's go back, or let's go over this problem. So what you should have done is we have 24.03, and then we want to line up the decimals. So we're going to put that here, and we're going to put the 6 here in the 1 spot and the 8 in the 10th spot. I'm going to fill this in with a 0. I'm going to add these together. So 3 plus 0 is 3, 0 plus 8 is 8, 4 plus 6 is 10, carry the 1, and 2 plus 1 is 3. So your answer should have been 30.83. Here's a third example, steps for subtracting decimals. Please make sure that you copy these steps in your notes. Number 1 is to align the decimals. Number 2, you're going to add zeros so the numbers being subtracted have the same number of decimal places. You may have to pause the video to get this copied down, and then we're going to start in on the first problem. So we have 24.9 minus 23.85. So before we subtract, we're going to fill in with zeros. And again, notice how the decimals are lined up here. Notice how the decimals, let me highlight this, are lined up. They're all in the same spot. So that means in our answer, the decimal is going to be, whoops, I'm going to turn off the highlighter. Decimal is going to be in the same spot. So let's subtract. We cannot subtract 0 from 5, or 5 from 0, so we have to borrow. So then 10 minus 5 is 5. 8 minus 8 is 0. We have the decimal point here. 4 minus 3 is 1, and 2 minus 2 is 0. And we don't have to write that 0 in front of the 1. So the answer is 1.05. Why don't you try the next one on your own? Pause the video for a minute and try it, and then when you're ready, turn it back on and we'll go over it. Okay, welcome back. Let's try this problem. We have 56.4 minus 48.63. And notice how I've neatly written this so the decimals are lined up. The decimal is going to be here in the answer. I'm going to fill this in with a 0. You can't subtract 3 from 0, so we have to borrow. 10 minus, oh, this is a 3. 10 minus 3 is 7. We can't subtract 6 from 3, so we have to borrow. So this is a 13, this becomes a 5. 13 minus 6 is 7. We can't subtract 8 from 5, so we need to borrow. It's 15. 15 minus 8 is 7. So your answer should be 7.77. Thank you for listening and taking notes. Be sure to come to class with questions that you may have tomorrow.